We got to address the elephant in the room, no pun intended, okay? As I'm sure you guys are aware, our boy Akash, he really went through it earlier this year.
Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's...
All right, so on the Flagrant podcast, the co-host, I guess the B mic, there's a C and D mic as well, Akash Singh, has officially quit the podcast. So this is something that people were speculating about for a while because there was a big controversy regarding Akash and his wife, which I have not touched at all because it's not something that I'm all that interested in terms of his personal life. Didn't really have a lot of crossover with political implications, so I didn't really care. But essentially what happened is that his wife, supposedly they're religious, and so when they got married, they were both virgins. That's something that Akash Singh has talked about on the program before, but then she was doing podcasts where she was telling stories where it sounded like she had sexual activity in her past, so the internet started saying that she was lying to him about being a virgin and was getting cucked, etc., etc. So it turned into this whole thing, and people have been forensically studying every aspect of it, things that she said, people she knows, etc. Now, people have come to their conclusions about how they feel about Jasleen Singh, that's his wife, and I'm just not that interested in dissecting their relationship or trying to figure out what is going on there. I think that that's weird, frankly. And the only aspect of this that I can think of that's interesting to talk about is the sort of manosphere aspect. This was a story that I believe was heavily amplified by Myron Gaines because he had pre-existing beef with the Flagrant guys. The fresh and fit manosphere guy, kind of the premier grifter, absolute clown of the manosphere world, recently got humiliated himself in the Louis Theroux documentary where he kind of played a starring role, and he essentially caught on to this thing that Jasleen Singh was saying and made it a big deal, and it went super viral. So they got hounded about that for weeks, and it turned into this big embarrassing thing for Akash Singh. He hasn't been on the podcast for a few weeks. I think since they had a podcast where they addressed this, his wife came on the podcast, but ever since then, he has been distant from the pod. They kept saying he was going to come back shortly, and it turns out that that is not the case. So here is the Flagrant boys somewhat dejectedly discussing that Akash will not be coming back.
We got to address the elephant in the room, no pun intended, okay? As I'm sure you guys are aware, our boy Akash, he really went through it earlier this year, showed amazing resilience and, selling out Radio City recently, setting records in Toronto, just crushing stand-up around the globe, and literally just like living the dreams that he would tell me about at 2 a.m. when we're eating fucking egg sandwiches at Veselka. So it's been amazing to see, but the experience has put things in perspective for him. And he has made the decision to focus all of his energy on stand-up. He is going to be stepping away from the pod. It is bittersweet. We wish that he did not want to do that. But at the same time, it's very hard not to root for your friend, literally living his dreams. And if he feels he's got to give everything to that, then that's exactly what he's got to do. And we're going to rock with him. We hope you guys continue to rock with him. Go check out the show. We saw the show Radio City. It's phenomenal. You guys should absolutely go check it out. AkashSingh.com.
I love you, brother, but we'll see each other, so it's all good.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah, it's cool to see all the venues he's selling out.
She and I have a relationship where it's like, I don't give a what you say, she doesn't give a what I say. I have her location, she has my location. Every time if you look at 90% of her TikToks, they're on our couch. Like, she don't go nowhere without me. So I'm like, whatever you say, I don't care. I know you. But the internet just ran with it and made it a thing. And at first, it really fucked me up.
I wanted to ask you, how did you really feel? Because I can't ever gauge, because you are a comic. You're so good at this. You do have thick skin.
Yeah.
I have seen, meaning for the most part, the success that you have had. I don't know. I don't feel like things really faze you like that. So I couldn't gauge if it really hurt.
I was deeply fazed.
But what hurt you about?
It's just they're saying it about your wife. And I think the stuff they say about me will make me insecure. But when you're saying this about my wife and you're calling her all this vile stuff, people were messaging my mom and her mom saying she's a whore, she's this, she's that. It was like, yo, this is crazy how far this has gone.
Get it. How did she feel about everything?
She was, look, it affected her for sure. But she said, this is where I don't I wish people knew, and I said this to her before she started doing social media. She's the most multi-dimensional person I know, where she pops off, says crazy shit, says disrespectful shit, but also is so spiritual, so grounded, and so like she just kind of kept that energy. She was like, whatever y'all think about me is whatever y'all think about me. I know who I am. God knows who I am. That's it.
I love that.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's stressful, and like I had to realize there's a lot of people's voices in your ear, like it talking in your ear, like she needs to do this, she needs to do that, and then I had to realize like she's the one that's actually strong and courageous, and the rest of us are like running and hiding and going dark and blah blah blah. And she's like, no, I know who I am. Go f yourselves. Yeah. So
So I was actually surprised by this, honestly, that he's not coming back to the podcast. Like I said, I didn't touch this whole thing. It struck me as the kind of internet drama that was less important to me. You know, people kind of piling on something that doesn't really matter. And, you know, to an extent, all of this internet stuff is stuff that doesn't really matter. But I at least try to break these conversations open into something that is more interesting and that does matter. And like I said, the only angle that I could think of for that here is the fact that Flagrant has purposely dipped its toes into the sort of manosphere world, crossed over the audiences there. They've done collabs with Myron Gaines in the past. And so it's not a surprise not only that this became a thing amongst their audience, but that it was enough of an audience that it kind of had a sting to it, to where it's not clear at what point Akash decided he didn't want to come back. But this has essentially been like an ongoing joke amongst the audience. And, you know, like I said, people essentially view it unequivocally as Jasleen Singh, you know, cheated on him and had all this sexual experience before him and kind of lied to him about it. So that's the thing where that may very well be true, and if you watch enough videos about it, they'll make a very compelling case for you. But at the same time, I think trying to zero in on what's happening in people's personal lives is where the internet mentality goes a little too far. Like, to think that you know what's going on in someone's personal life, or that you know things about them because of the internet content they're putting out there, is a little delusional. Doesn't mean you can't discern certain things, or that they're not right about certain things, or that there isn't a grain of truth. I don't know. I don't like Akash Singh enough to die on the hill of defending whether or not I think this was all like blown out of proportion. But what it seems like to me is that in the way Andrew Schulz decided to handle it, by playing into the joke, trying to alleviate some of the tension with the audience by, you know, doing an episode about it, having fun with it, getting into the issue, talking about it. And it seems like since that didn't work, and Akash Singh decided after that he wasn't going to come back to the podcast, that his wife may have felt that they kind of made a joke out of it, or kind of, you know, got their giggles off a little bit too much about this whole thing. Because they did. They joked about it. They took it as funny. And it seems that this was something that genuinely wounded either the feelings of Akash Singh, the feelings of his wife, or both, or their relationship. And that's where these things can get kind of crazy, because like I said, this is a lot of speculation. And even if it's true, even if all the speculation is true about what his wife is lying about or not lying about, who gives a fuck? I don't know. It just seems like a weird thing to hound somebody about. And probably there was a sense that, you know, Andrew Schulz stoked the flames instead of just quashing it, or, you know, encouraged it in some sense. I don't really know what the right way to handle it instead would have been, because it's true that this stuff that she was saying on our podcast kind of started this whole thing, and it was a whole fire that needed to be put out somehow. But really, this is just, you know, this type of standards that these manosphere psychopaths pretend to hold themselves to, because none of it is legitimate. And this Myron Gaines guy recently in that Louis Theroux documentary, I mean, it's just clear that this guy's a fucking dope. He's trying to control his woman. He's with some poor girl that he's manipulating into thinking that it makes sense that he can go and have other girlfriends, but she can't. And it's just bizarre. It's a bizarre worldview, and it has a lot of audience behind it, because there's a lot of young kids out there that I think perceive that as something that gets them laid. And Andrew Schulz definitely, more so than some of the other Rogan Sphere guys, dipped into that manosphere world because he wanted to participate in that audience. I think he saw the appeal of it. He saw the value of it. He saw that that's where young men were attracted to, and he saw that it's kind of easy. All you have to do is like that bravado. You just got to be loud, and you got to give sort of an example of what it looks like to be masculine. Andrew Schulz is the guy who was saying that he likes when Trump says he wants to go and take Greenland and all this bullying stuff. He finds it thrilling and fun, and said that, you know, Republicans are the ones that get pussy now because Trump is the one that gets pussy. This is all the stuff that he was saying in favor of Trump, glazing Trump, before he recently decided that he can't continue to justify it. And I think that's really what this comes back to, is that there's a bite to this audience. And in my view, it's pretty, what would you call it? Like nihilistic. You know, this is a nihilistic worldview that these manosphere guys traffic in. And so it's not surprising that that comes back to bite you, or that if you set these weird standards about what masculinity looks like and what it should look like, your relationship between your wife and you and whatever, and you're participating in communities that hold these weird pseudo-traditional standards about what that should look like, or just enjoy the act of harassing women, harassing men about women, it's not surprising that that's eventually going to encroach on your ability to have a healthy relationship, especially if you're two people who are trying to exist in the public limelight. And that's really all this comes down to, is that Akash Singh and his wife were both just had podcasts that were just like out there, you know, not huge celebrities or anything. And in fact, Akash Singh has discussed that this incident has made him way bigger than he ever was before, a way bigger name, because before he was just literally the co-host on this podcast. But now apparently he's doing these shows that are doing well, and that's probably part of the calculus for him saying, you know what, I'm getting more money doing shows because these are my shows, and suddenly people know my name more than they did before. Whereas, you know, maybe the Flagrant money's drying up a little bit, not as profitable as it was when things were really flowing. Plus, things have gotten very toxic, and it's toxic in a way that is now backlashing on Akash. And I mean, something that his wife said at some point that she got some backlash for was that she thinks a big part of this is that people in the Flagrant audience are racist. And so they kind of just double down on this stuff. And I think that's true. Again, it comes into that manosphere stuff and just that right-wing type of audience that Schulz has been leaning into. And yeah, it comes back to bite. So it's not to say that that doesn't happen in other communities. I think all communities can be kind of vicious with one another, and these spectacles of turning somebody into the sort of main character and then poking and prodding their lack of ability to figure out how to handle it, how to speak on it, how to get out of that situation. It's a permanent pattern of the internet that I think we all find ourselves in, which is the reason I don't try to participate in these like humiliation trains if there's not a good point to be made. And I think the only good point to be made here is that with these right-wingers, their bigoted ideology comes first. So, you know, dogpiling a woman because of talking about her sexuality publicly, or somebody who's a minority as a co-host on a show, talking about their culture or whatever, like that always is going to come first before any sense of like, we shouldn't take this too far, we shouldn't be talking about this person's personal life, or, you know, just these standards that you might like to have fun with in terms of what a man should be and how a man should act towards his woman or whatever. If you train your audience to think that way, then eventually they're going to start having demands for how you visibly treat your women. And the same thing is happening to Myron Gaines, by the way. He set a certain standard for what a relationship between him and his wife or girlfriend or whatever is supposed to look like. And then now that you can actually see what it looks like, it's pathetic and it's sad. And you can see that this isn't a person who's capable of holding together a relationship. And that's what bothers me a little bit about this whole situation, is that I don't think any of it is reflective on the nature of their actual relationship. And with Akash Singh, I feel like I see somebody who's trying to hold his relationship together. And a lot of these manosphere types have no idea about any of that. So, you know, that's the thing, is I feel like this is a somewhat healthy approach to a relationship that they had. Even if this whole thing about being a virgin isn't true, I don't give a fuck about that, because I don't believe in that either as a, you know, a necessary thing for marriage. So the fact that that's a religious thing that they believe in does make it a little bit weirder or less relatable to me personally. Like, I don't know what it's like to go through that, but it seems to me that, you know, he waded into these waters with these bigoted people. He wants to do this podcast talking to Trump, and same with the guys who are still there, by the way. The same is true for them, and I'm sure they can see that the audience could turn on them over anything. And the manosphere audience is going to be unforgiving in the way that they are unforgiving. People like Schulz might gravitate towards that area because they feel like they're going to be open to a person like him, someone who has been accused by his ex of different kinds of misconduct. And that is why people gravitate towards the manosphere, because the manosphere is not going to punish you for those type of behaviors. But if you have, I don't know, a normal relationship with your partner that isn't like controlling and sociopathic, then you're going to lose respect in their eyes. And that's the problem with constructing this, you know, fake idea of masculinity that's not sustainable. That's what it comes down to. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for any of these guys, not sustainable for any of the people in the audience that try to uphold that version of masculinity, or Myron Gaines or anybody. So it seems to me that the right-wing audience in general right now is in a bit of a recession, and you're seeing it all over the place. Ben Shapiro's views are falling. Tim Pool's views are falling. So just in general, I think money is being drained out of that part of the economy right now. People are investing in it less, and nobody's sure what the future of conservative commentary capture is going to be. So I think it's just kind of a downturn in that market right now, and you're seeing a lot of that dejection from Andrew Schulz. Doesn't make sense financially for him to keep going in that direction, or reputationally. He's losing co-hosts over it, losing audience over it potentially, and this is the prison that they made for themselves. So I don't really feel bad for these guys. I don't feel bad for Akash Singh either, because he was always a relatively conservative voice on this show, and I think that probably won't change. People don't tend to change their mind, maybe a little bit, but this isn't a kind of racism that he's unfamiliar with dealing with or anything like that. So ultimately, I think he will fail to connect what happened here to the right-wing audience that they purposely flirted with on this show. And, that's a shame, because if you hadn't tried to signal to that audience in the first place, then you never would have found yourself having to answer to this in particular.